Good morning. Welcome to our Bible study this morning. This morning we'll be looking at a Bible lesson entitled Our Companions in Old Age. Our Companions in Old Age. We'll be looking at Ecclesiastes chapter 12 verses 1 through 8, and we'll also be looking at Isaiah chapter 46 and verse number 4. So once again, that'll be Ecclesiastes 12, 1 through 8, and Isaiah 46, 4. If you would like to turn ahead to those scriptures and maybe put a marker in your Bible, that's fine. What we're looking at this morning, folks, is a lesson that I hope will help to comfort each one of us as we grow a bit older in life. You know, that's one thing about the aging process. It touches us all, from the smallest of babies to the most elderly of adults. Every one of us every day grows a bit older. And the Bible has much to say about the aging process, and it also has much to say about what the Christian's attitude about the aging process should be. So what I would like us to look at this morning to begin with is Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 1 through 8. In Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 1 through 8, King Solomon describes the aging process. And during the course of this description, the basic principle I would like us to see in these verses is keep in mind these things are awaiting each one of us as we gradually age and grow closer to our time of death. So the type of things that Solomon describes in this passage, folks, these are things that each one of us can expect to take place in our own lives as time progresses. You know, if the Lord does not see fit to come back, if he doesn't spare us at this point in time from the physical aging process, each one of us will be experiencing some of these things that Solomon talks about. Now, we know that the Lord's coming back someday. The question is when. And none of us can know the day or the hour, so it could be the Lord will come back before we have to face these things. Then again, it might be the Lord will choose to allow us to go through these things and come back at a later time in history. So we'll just have to see. But the point of this morning's lesson, first of all, is to get an understanding of what awaits us as we grow older. And then I would like us to see the Christian's attitude toward these things. How are we to look at things? If we know what awaits us in the future as far as our physical aging, how are we then to handle these things? Well, that's what we'll be looking at this morning. If you'd look with me, please, at Ecclesiastes 12, verses 1 through 8. Listen to what King Solomon says. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh. Okay, folks, keep in mind, this is probably some of the best advice that I can give to anyone, and this is probably some of the best advice that King Solomon ever gave. Serve the Lord while you're young. Serve the Lord while you have your health. Because as time progresses and as you get older, it gets more difficult to serve the Lord in ways that are pleasing to him. You're going to see why in just a minute when Solomon begins to describe the aging process. But right here we can see the basic principle. Young people, serve the Lord while you have the health too. Because there may come a time in your life when you no longer can do things that you want to do for the Lord. And I'll tell you, that's very difficult. You know, it's a very difficult thing to get to the point in your life where you want to serve the Lord in certain ways, but you find because of your health, you just can't do it anymore. Okay, Solomon goes on now, and here's what he has to say. This is him describing the physical aging process that he had experienced. Keep in mind, Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes as an old man looking back on his life and the lessons he had learned during his life on earth. As he writes about the aging process, these are things for the most part that he experienced to one degree or another. But keep in mind, folks, there'll be the same type of experiences that each one of us will be facing as we grow older also. He goes on, he says, I have no pleasure in them. What's the idea of having no pleasure in them? He's talking about the evil days in the previous verse. He's talking about the times when aging begins to touch each one of us. When you're young, you can enjoy life in many ways, in much greater ways than you can as you grow older. And the reason why is physical aches and pains many times take away from the pleasure of doing certain activities that we used to enjoy. Maybe things like gardening, where now you just can't even get down on the ground to take care of plants, where before you loved to take care of plants. Maybe it's playing certain sports where you used to love to play those sports, but now, you know what? Because of the aging process, you just can't do it anymore. It just hurts too much. That's what Solomon means by having no pleasure in those days, in the days of aging. The reason why is it's because of the aches and pains that take away the pleasure we formerly were able to have as young people doing whatever activities we enjoyed. He goes on, while the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened. Okay, he continues his description of aging. Here he says, the light sources become dim. Boy, we all know that. There was a time I could read and, practically it seemed like total darkness. Now I've got to have a desk lamp right over whatever I'm reading to illuminate it for me to be able to read clearly. As we grow older, it seems like we need more light. It seems like our eyes have a difficulty seeing the light that's there. That's what he's saying. He's saying, look, when I was young, the sun, the light, the moon, the stars, man, they were all just standing out brightly. But as he got older, they gradually grew more and more dim. He needed more light. He couldn't see the light that was there nearly as well as he used to. Again, I think many of us have experienced that if we've reached that point in our life. It goes on, nor the clouds return after the rain. As you get older, you'll find that your problems become more consistent. Again, just in generalities, and I realize each person's life is different, but in generalities, when you're younger, it seems like you have less problems. And when you do have problems, it seems like they're not consistent. You might have a problem here and a problem there, but then have long breaks in between when you don't have as many physical problems. Well, as you get older, it's like a rainstorm that comes drenching you in problems, and as it leaves, more clouds head your way. It's a more consistent type of thing where your physical ailments become more consistent in your life. Sometimes it seems like they'll never leave up. He goes on, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble. This is talking about our immune system, the keepers of the house. Again, for most of us when we were young, we didn't get sick nearly as much as we do as we get older. It seems like many of the diseases that our immune system was able to push away and to keep away from us, as we grow older, our immune system doesn't work as well. And it seems like we become more susceptible to different diseases that are around us. And the strong men shall bow themselves. Our physical strength weakens as we grow older. Think about the strong men who used to be able to lift, gigantic amounts of weight during the course of their labors here on earth. As they grow older, what happens? Their muscles weaken to the point they can't even hold themselves up. They end up bowing down just because of the weight of their upper body. They can no longer even hold their upper body erect. The grinders cease because they are few. That's talking about our teeth. Over time, more and more of our teeth decay. Probably for most of us, we end up losing some of our teeth. In Solomon's case, he describes a person who has lost, most of his teeth. When he says the grinders cease because they're few. So we have different teeth problems as we grow older. And those that look out of the windows be darkened. Okay? Who's looking out the windows of our heart and of our life? It's our eyes. Here he's talking about the things like cataracts and other types of eye diseases that can bring blindness to a person. And the doors shall be shut in the streets. What are the doors? The doors are talking about our mouth. You know, the thing that gives entrance to our body, just like a door gives entrance to a house, our mouth gives entrance into our body. That's where the food passes to enter our body. That's where we get nourishment from. The doors being shut in the streets is talking about the idea of no longer able maybe to digest our food like we used to. You know, some foods I used to love when I was younger, as I get older, I just can't eat them anymore. Also, it talks about the idea of getting to a point in time as we age where perhaps we won't even be able to eat at all. Our doors being shut in the streets. He goes on, when the sound of the grinding is low, that's hearing loss. Again, the idea is a person gets to the point they lose so much hearing they can't even hear themselves chew their food. The sound of the grinding of food becomes low. He shall rise up at the voice of a bird. As we get older, we have a tendency, I think, to worry more. And again, of course, for Christians, this shouldn't be. We should be trusting in the Lord with all of our problems, with all of our issues. It just seems like as we get older, we have a tendency to be more susceptible to worrying about things and being concerned about things. Many times we find ourselves concerned about things we didn't even give a thought to when we were younger. The idea of giving rise at the voice of a bird is the idea, first of all, waking up real early in the morning because you can't sleep. You have too many worries, too many things on your mind. Also, I think it points to the idea when we do sleep, we don't sleep soundly like we used to. We don't get in a good deep sleep. As you get older, your sleep becomes more light. You don't get into that deep sleep where nothing will wake you up. Now, as you get older, as you sleep, the least little noise, just the sound of a bird outside the window is going to wake you up. He goes on, all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Here we find our talents, our natural talents, the abilities the Lord gave to us, gradually decline. You know, it's like singers, daughters of music. As they were younger, they were able to sing songs that would glorify and honor the Lord. They would be able to please the people listening to them because their voice sounded so beautiful. What happens? Their voice grows low as they get older. They lose those abilities to do what before was just natural for them to be able to do. Also, when they shall be afraid of that which is on high, and fear shall be in the way. Boy, this is a good one. When we were younger folks, we did some things, looking back, we can't imagine how we did. How stupid could we be to do those things like we did? And yet now, why does it appear to be stupid back then, the things we did, the chances we took at times? Well, now we have these fears within us. We can see more of the danger that was involved, and that stops us from doing what we want to do. You know, another example of this idea of fears getting in the way is when you're younger, perhaps heights didn't bother you. So, man, you could get on the tallest of ladders. You could go to the highest roof of a house, you know, to fix things, because height was never an issue with you. So you could get up and down those ladders like nothing. As you grow older, you get to the point you're scared of even getting on a step stool. Why? You're afraid of falling. You're afraid of breaking a bone. So as you grow older, the things that you used to take for granted, the things that you never feared, the things that you were able to do without fear now, as you get older, fill your heart with fear. You know, for those of us who have begun to age, and for those of us who are continuing in the aging process, I think at least some of these hold true in our lives even now, much less knowing that most of them will take place before we die. You know, Solomon's not painting a real pretty picture of the aging process, and he's referring back, remember, to verse 1 where he said, this is why you have to serve the Lord while you're young. Serve the Lord while you can, because the aging process is not pretty. The aging process isn't easy to go through. The aging process makes it much more difficult for people to serve the Lord, so serve Him while you're young. Okay, he goes on, and the almond tree shall flourish. The almond tree had grayish white flowers on it. So here he's talking about losing our hair color, growing gray hair. I'm experiencing that. There was a time my beard matched my hair, no longer. Well, now it does on the sides where my hair is starting to turn gray now. He goes on, the grasshopper shall be a burden. Remember when you were young? We had great reflexes back then. Man, you could catch a grasshopper in mid-jump. Yeah, you could time your foot so it would tramp right on the grasshopper without the grasshopper getting away. Now, trying to get rid of a little grasshopper is a burden as we grow older. Our timing isn't what it used to be. Our reflexes are what they used to be. It's much more difficult to catch that grasshopper. It just jumps and we can't react quick enough and it gets away. Or we try to tramp on it, and because we don't have our balance like we used to, our foot doesn't come down exactly where we want it to come down, and it misses a grasshopper and it gets away. Again, there was a time when we were young, a grasshopper was no big deal. We could take care of it like that. Now as we get older, what happens? It becomes a real burden to us to get rid of a grasshopper. For some of us, it may be almost impossible to do it. And finally, and this is a big one, he goes on and he says, and desire shall fail. Folks, because of all these things we've looked at concerning the aging process, many times we lose our desire to do things that otherwise we would desire to do. And that includes serving the Lord in certain ways. Because of our aches and pains and because of all of our physical hindrances, we just don't want to do things we used to want to do. I know for myself even, just being 57 or 58. There were things I used to really enjoy when I was younger that I really have very little desire to do anymore because I know, first of all, I couldn't do it like I did when I was younger. I would fail at it. And number two, I really, I just don't enjoy doing it anymore because of all my physical hindrances. Things like shooting baskets and things like that I used to really enjoy when I was a kid. I used to be outside as kids shooting baskets hours on end. If I had a hoop and a basketball now, I'm not even sure if I would, I might take a shot or two, but that would be about it because I know I would end up paying the price the next day. Our desires fail as we get older. We just don't want to do what we used to enjoy doing. Same thing in certain areas of service of the Lord. Believe me, as we grow older, we should always desire to serve the Lord in whatever ways we can. But certainly there are some ways we just can no longer serve the Lord as we get older. In many cases, we don't even desire to serve the Lord in certain ways anymore because we know the physical cost it would be to us as far as the aches and the pains and the inability to really do things effectively for the Lord like we used to. Folks, keep in mind, this message was entitled what? Our Companions in Old Age. These are our companions in old age, what we've just read about. Solomon gave us a list of many companions that walk with us during old age. Did you ever wonder why people have to age? Why is it that all of us have to face these things? Well, I think for those of us who are Christians, for the most part, we understand. It's because we're fallen creatures. Because Adam and Eve chose to disobey the Lord in the garden. Because of that, we now have aging take place. Remember, aging is really simply leading up to death. That's what it's all about. That's the reason why we age. It's to bring about death. Aging is our body headed for death, where it's like our body, the best way I can picture it in my own mind at least, is our body is wearing out. Just like a car that you drive for miles and miles and miles and miles, and gradually one thing after the other starts to wear out. That's what aging is. It's our body wearing out. And the reason why our body wears out is because it's headed toward physical death. Solomon goes on in these verses now and describes what physical death is all about. He says, look, all of the companions of aging that we've read about, all are leading to this. Here's why they take place. This is why they take place in life. It's because man goeth to his long home, in other words, physical death. We are headed for an eternal habitation, our long home. For the Christian, that long home will be in the presence of the Lord. For the lost person, that long home will be in eternity in the lake of fire. Irregardless of saved or lost, irregardless of being a Christian or not, we are all headed for a long home. The question is, what is that long home going to be? And the mourners go about the streets. That's our funeral. He says, why do all these things take place in our life? Because we're headed for physical death. It's because we have funerals existing. Because of physical death. Or ever the silver cord be loosed. Solomon says it's like our spirit is hooked to our body with a silver cord, binding the two together where our spirit is in our body. There's coming a day when that silver cord is going to be loosed. That's basically our physical life and the loss of that physical life. When that physical life is lost, when the silver cord is broken, what's going to happen? Our spirit then is going to depart from our body and we will experience physical death. The golden bowl be broken. When we die, our usefulness here on earth ends. It's like a golden bowl. It's a bowl that the King of Kings and God himself has made. It's a golden bowl. Here on earth, though, our usefulness comes to an end. It's like that bowl is broken. It can no longer hold water. Even though it's made of gold, you might as well just throw it on the trash heap because really it's of no value to anybody. Why? Because it's broken. It can no longer do what it was meant to do. Or the pitcher be broken at the fountain. Here we find at physical death our body is no longer able to retain our spirit. Our body has done wore out. There's nothing left for it. It's worn out. It's come to an end. It can no longer retain the spirit that was within it. The wheel broken at the cistern. Our body becomes no longer useful to anyone else here on earth as well. You know, the wheel of a cistern is what enables people to draw water out of the cistern. Solomon here pictures our physical lives as a wheel that's setting above the cistern that other people use for their benefit. We can no longer help anybody when we're dead. Solomon gets into great detail on that in Ecclesiastes, that once death takes place, there's nothing left for us as far as being able to accomplish on earth. What we want to accomplish on earth now, we must do now. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was. That's our physical body decaying. And the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. It returns to God to be disposed to whatever its eternal dwelling will be, either in the presence of the Lord or in the lake of fire. And that will take place at the judgment of the Lord. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, all is vanity. Solomon, as he looks back at his physical life, he's an old man now. He's experienced all this aging that's taken place. If you read other parts of Ecclesiastes, you find he experiences everything the world had to offer, all the riches of the world, all the honor of the world, all the education the world had to offer. He experienced the arts and the culture of this world. From a human standpoint, as Solomon looks back at all that he experienced in life, and now as he's feeling the aging process take place, he comes to the conclusion, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. from a strictly human standpoint, and again, I want to emphasize that this is simply from a human standpoint. If you leave God out of the equation, and if you just look at physical life from a human standpoint, physical life is vain. What's the purpose? You experience all those things the world has to offer that we know all of the worldly offerings are worthless in the end. So you experience all the things the world has to offer. You end up with no lasting value to them. They can't stop aging from taking place. They can't stop death from taking place. So you experience all that stuff, and what's it worth in the end? Then, to top it off, how's your life come to an end? Experience these effects of aging. And Solomon, as an old man now, he looks back and he says, man, all is vanity. What does the word vanity mean? It's a real interesting word. It's a Hebrew word that can describe something like a bubble in water. Have you ever seen an air bubble in water? What happens to a bubble when it's in water? It rises to the top of the water very quickly. Sometimes it moves so fast your eye can't hardly even see the bubble go up. When it hits the top of the water, it blows apart and it's gone. There's nothing left. Solomon says that's exactly what physical life is like from a human standpoint. It's like a bubble that lasts just a short period of time, and in the end, when it reaches the top, it just blows apart and nothing's left. No lasting value, no lasting worth. Basically, all life is, Solomon says, is a series of mistaken pursuits and pain and suffering. Man, talk about a depressing message for people. And yet, again, from a human standpoint, Solomon is exactly right. Excuse me. Solomon's exactly right. From a human standpoint, that is what life is. It's a series of aimless pursuits that culminates in pain and suffering, going out of existence at death with no lasting value to it. Life is short-lived with no permanent value from a human standpoint. But you know what the wonderful news is? Folks, as Christians, we don't have to look at things that way at all. Solomon was describing his life, even though Solomon was a Christian, he was describing his life on purpose with the intent of leaving the Lord out of it, to let people see the aimlessness of the pursuits of this world and the need to serve the Lord while they're young. So even though Solomon's a Christian, he's describing life as a lost person would look at it, saying, wake up. You need the Lord, because if you don't, this is what your life is going to be without the Lord. Nothing. Folks, as a Christian, we know life is not simply short-lived with no value to it. All those companions of aging that Solomon gave us, there's one more companion to aging that in this context Solomon didn't mention, again because he was trying to reach out to lost people to get them to see their need of the Lord. Do you know the one companion to aging that Solomon left out? Listen to Isaiah 46 and verse number 4. This is the Lord speaking to his chosen people on earth, his physically chosen people in Isaiah 46:4. Listen to this. And even to your old age I am he. And even to hoar hairs, gray hairs, will I carry you. I have made and I will bear. Even I will carry and will deliver you. Man, listen, if the Lord gave that promise to his physically chosen people, the physical Israelites, can you imagine how much greater that promise applies to us, his spiritually chosen people? Folks, the companion that Solomon failed to mention in Ecclesiastes 12, the companion to aging that Solomon forgot, is the Lord. Listen again to how the Lord describes the fact that he's going to be with us through this entire aging process. Listen to what's said. And even to your old age I am he. Folks, the same Lord that took care of us when we were young is the same Lord that's going to take care of us as we get older. Stop and think about it. Stop and think about your life and all the blessings the Lord has given you in the past. Think of the many times he took care of you. Think of the many times he delivered you from different trials and different heartaches you were facing. Think about the many times he showed you his grace and his mercy and his love. That same Lord that was with you when you were younger is the same Lord that is with you in old age. He goes on, even to your hoar hairs will I carry you. He says, when you can no longer walk, I'm going to be there to carry you. I have made and I will bear. As our Creator, he will be our support when we place all of our weight upon him. He says, listen, come to me and lean on me in your old age. I'm going to be there to bear your weight up when you can't bear your own weight anymore. Even I will carry and will deliver you. He'll carry us in the times of our physical weaknesses, and at death he'll release us to an eternity with him. He'll deliver us from this shell of pain and this shell of sorrow and this shell of infirmity. Folks, think about that companion that we have in death. That one companion helps us to overcome all those other companions that Solomon wrote about. You notice the Lord didn't say, I promise my people no one will ever have to face these difficulties in aging. He never once says that. There are sometimes he does grace some of his people where they don't have to face some of these things or all of these things. But in general, we all are going to face these things. The Lord doesn't promise to keep those away from us. He promises us to be with us as we go through them. He said, I'll carry you, I'll bear you, I'll carry you, and I will deliver you. He is our companion as we age. So folks, I'd like to just ask you, for those of you who are like me that are just kind of beginning to feel some of the effects of aging in our life, keep in mind, even though we are going to have these companions with us the rest of our life, and for many of us, those companions will be stronger as time goes on. There'll be more of them as time goes on. You remember something. The Lord's going to be there just as closely to us as those other companions, even more closely to us. And he'll be the one that will enable us to get through all of these things by his grace for his glory. The key is to remember, even concerning these things, the things we go through as we age for the Christian, the Lord's allowing them for a reason. And I believe the greatest reason is to use us to honor and glorify himself. Folks, it's easy to have a smile on our face and to say, boy, the Lord is good when we're feeling good, when we don't have any problems in life. It's something far different. It's a far greater testimony to be able to still have a joyful heart when we go through these trials. As the Lord brings these trials upon us, what should our one aim be and our one goal be? I want to keep glorifying the Lord and honoring the Lord as I go through this, just like I did when I was young. I want to be sure that when people look at me, they see the Lord in me, no matter how many of these different companions of aging might enter into my life. I want them to see Christ in me. When I'm in pain, I want them to see Christ. When I can't see like I used to, I want them to see Christ. When I can't hear like I used to, I want them to see Christ. When I struggle to even get up in the morning, I want them to see Christ in me. Folks, that should be the greatest aim and goal of any Christian as we age. To allow the Lord himself to be our closest companion and enable us to get through these things and glorify him in the process. I do want to thank you very much for joining with us in this time of Bible study. May the Lord bless you as you study his word.